Hopefully I get it right. I've only gotten it right one time.
You're not seeing the floor, right? I can set my Dr. Pepper down.
No, I mean, you can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're okay. And even like we're cutting off here, I think that's fine. That'll be all right. Oh, dear. And
we're going to face each other.
Well, yeah, we are. I mean, if you want to. Also,
you stay on that
side. After we change every disc, we're going to clap so I can sync the audio better later.
All right.
Sorry, I'm going through the intro right now.
Relax.
Okay. Let's see if we have it. Okay. On one, I guess. 3.
Both of us?
Both of us. 3, 2, 1. That was good.
Well, thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of A Moment of Friendly Introspection with Stephen Floyd, the conversational podcast with creative guests and thoughtful questions. This month, my guest is John Mays. John, how are you?
I'm good. Hello to all the folks out there.
That was great. Okay, you are probably the most seasoned podcast guest that I've had on the show.
Go ahead and say what that actually means.
I didn't mean it like that.
Yes, you did.
What I meant was you have done the most podcasts of any of the guests I've had.
Okay.
Truly and honestly, that is what I meant.
But you also meant I'm the oldest.
I didn't even think about it. Didn't think about it, even though you are. What has been your favorite podcast to guest on so far? And just know you will be throwing shade to everyone. That isn't the answer.
No, because I can tell you what. A guy that used to work at Centricity, Ben Stauffer, who was in our finance department, but also a heavy music guy, did a podcast for a while where you just talked about music.
Yeah.
And his favorite, your favorite songs, his favorite songs. At the end, you picked a record for him to listen to.
I love that.
And he would talk about it on the next podcast. I don't know, he might have done 7 or 8 of them.
Oh, okay.
And it was also the typical stuff, your story,
sure,
music industry questions. But I really enjoyed that one because it made me think about what I'd been listening to that year, look back at what my most listened to track was and all that kind of stuff. He was interested in that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
It was fun.
Yeah. Do you know if he still does it or?
No.
No. Okay.
Not in years.
Yeah.
Who knows why those things run a little course and then
sure.
stop. It feels like that's what most podcasts do.
Hey,
so you got to break that.
Well, no, the difference between me and everyone else is I'm planning to stop after 12.
Oh, that's right.
I'm not just going to go and then fizzle out. Like this is a series for a reason.
And you've invested. Like I think,
time, money, blood, sweat, tears.
That's got to help fuel the longevity of it as well.
I guess.
We'll see.
The people will decide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we going to do ratings or something?
I mean, not necessarily, but they'll decide with their ears and with their excitement, I guess. I don't know.
So all their likes and shares.
Yeah. Okay. As someone who is seasoned, how do you feel about the evolution of how much say and how important the consumer is to art?
There's probably not a question or topic that's more divided through history than that topic. I could pull out some quotes right now that I've kept over the years. One side of it being, if you make art for any other honest reason than self-expression, it's not art. All the way to even C.S. Lewis saying, if you don't consider your audience when you create, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think over the years, I've come to feel like there's something in there that's right for each creator, right? Sure. You and I both know creators who probably will never have much commercial success, but they're happy with what they create because it's for them, it's their self-expression. They would love it if a bunch of people loved it, but if they don't, that's not why they made it anyway. And then other people, of course, who, if they read one negative review from anybody, they're not just their day, their year is ruined. So I think the answer to that question is as widely diverse as there are kinds of creators. The one factor that would change that is people who want to do it for a living. I don't think you can want to do it for a living and not have some consideration of how people will receive your work.
Yeah.
If you don't care at all, you better move over to the category of, hey, this is for me. If you care a little bit, you have to give a little bit of concern to how will people receive this? And if you're asking that question, you might actually shape your work toward something that someone might receive better than someone else.
That's a great answer. When you were creating things, because you still create as an A&R.
Yeah.
But when you were like an indie producer and a songwriter, how much did these thoughts weigh on you? Like, okay, I got to create for the market, whatever that was, or for the artist.
Yeah. I was fortunate in that I only did one project for a label. All the production I did was for indies.
Yeah.
And really, ultimately, all you had to do was make them happy.
Okay.
And if they were happy, and honestly, most of those projects were vanity projects. They were not people who would have gotten signed.
Yeah.
They just wanted to write some songs and record themselves performing those songs, whether it was a band or a soloist. So I always felt like, hey, if they like it, I've succeeded.
Yeah.
And I've earned my money, whatever they were paying me. The $12 they were paying me, I just earned it. So I didn't have to think that much. Now, the season of songwriting I went through, I feel like I thought about it a lot.
Okay, yeah.
Still, most of the writing I did was for these indie productions. So again, just trying to make them happy. But when I was just trying to write something that I thought might get pitched or possibly somebody might be interested in, I thought about that artist and the kinds of work they'd done before.
Yeah.
My songwriting was in an era where there was a lot of outside songs that got cut. And so you would go back and listen to the songs they've cut before, what kind of themes, what kind of styles of music do they do, and can you write something like that? I don't have any regrets over doing that. I wasn't trying to write for myself, right? Sure. So that would have been a different story. My whole purpose for writing was for someone else to use it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back in time a little bit more. How did you get to Nashville?
Yeah. Grew up in a little Pentecostal church. That church, as little as it was, and as much as I'm still unwinding some bad doctrine that I grew up with, they loved music, and I'm so grateful for it. And by the time I was 12 or 13, I sort of became the music kid at the church. And being that kid, when an opportunity came to go to a music camp that was, by the way, I'm from Texas, if I didn't mention that yet, let's get that in early.
Yeah, there you go.
It was around Dallas, which was like going to New York, for me. But my folks couldn't afford to send me to it, but this little church made up the difference and sent me to that. So I wouldn't be sitting here with you had it not been for that little church, and grateful for it. Met a couple of guys at that camp. It was the first time I'd ever been around other real musicians and guys who loved music. Mm-hmm. And when you show up at something like that, it's like, these are my people, right? Yeah. For the first time. And there were two guys. I was a sophomore in high school. They were juniors. And we just liked each other. And we played a little bit together at this camp. And we're like, oh, we got to start a band.
What years are this?
This is 72.
Okay.
And I graduated in 74. And for what it's worth, if anybody cares about this, my family, no one in my family went to college. My folks never talked about college.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was it wasn't part of their thought process, or they couldn't have afforded it anyway. I don't know why it never got brought up, but I never even considered it.
Yeah.
I don't remember people my age that I graduated school with talking about college. I'm sure they did, but my mind was so focused on getting graduated and moving across the state so I could play music with these guys. So that's what I did. No college in my story, but my kids have gone to college. I'm not anti-college. Just wasn't my path. So I played for a couple of years with those guys. We gigged around a lot at anything we could find, including cover bands at a Ramada Inn every Wednesday night, churches, backyard parties, literally anything we could get. But it was, you're probably, if you haven't already on your podcast, people will talk about paying their dues. And that can mean a lot of different things. But I think for musicians, your dues paying is the time that you spend where your desire to play is tested. And that was certainly mine during that time, because it was bad.
Yeah.
We had no money, and I'm talking literally had no money. We didn't have money to eat a lot of times. So I had about reached the end of that. So my testing period hit me and found me wanting after a couple of years. And so I thought, I'm probably going to go back home and work in the oil field, which is what everybody did that grew up in that little town. And about that time, we opened for this band out of Nashville at a county fair or something. And, check the providence of all this out. I was a bass player. We opened for this band. Their bass player is leaving in 2 weeks. And the guy who headed up the band was like, hey, our bass player's leaving. We're auditioning new players. And if you would like to come to Nashville and audition, you're welcome to. Great. It absolutely was not, hey, we'd love to audition you.
I guess it'll be fine.
Yeah. And gosh, Stephen, I was so sure that there was no way I would get that job, because how many Nashville bass players are going to audition for this job?
I was going to ask, did you feel good about having met them and been around them? Yeah.
No, but here's what it did for me. It gave me a stopping point. So I called my folks that night and I said, hey, these people said this to me tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and pack up my car and go to Nashville. I think it was like an October the 12th or something. And I'm going to do this audition. And then I can say I went to Nashville.
Yeah.
I can say I had a professional audition. All that's cool.
Absolutely.
And then I'm just going to come on back home. And they were like, son, that's great. Glad for that. But yeah, it's probably time for you to come back.
Yeah.
And had they known what I'd been going through those 2 years, they probably would have come and got me.
Yeah.
Thank God I was past 18 and making my own choices. So I did exactly that. I got to Nashville. If there's anybody watching that knows old Nashville, there was a truck stop on I-65 and Trinity Lane called Key Stop Truck Stop. It's the first one I saw. I pulled in the parking lot and I slept in my car that night. I went to the audition the next afternoon, and what do? They say, hey, can you come back tomorrow?
Good Lord.
And you can't be so uncool as to say, hey, I'm sleeping in my car.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
So 2 nights of sleeping in my car. But that second night, I was like, wow, they want me to come back. I mean, could this happen?
Yeah.
And literally, they had auditioned guys all day that day. So I don't know, maybe 20, 25 guys.
Yeah.
And they narrowed their list, and that's who was coming back the next day. And I left a part out that's significant. So you know this, but the night that we opened for them back in Texas, they had a singer singing with them that was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my life. Completely unapproachable. I had zero skills and had really never had a date in my life.
Oh man!
And I just, when I could get a glimpse of this woman, would just stare at her. And I thought she might be at that audition, which she wasn't. But
sure.
Anyway, I got the job, and that's what moved me to Nashville. Excuse me.
That's what moved me to Nashville.
Right? And I married that girl 1 year later. Well, no, 14 months later.
Close enough. 1 year. We'll round down.
So that's what got me here. And it's a story I love to tell because it so speaks of God's providence and these things that you and I both go through that are like, there's no way I could have ever planned that.
Sure.
You're in my journey together. No way that you plan that and make that happen.
Yeah.
But we run into people all the time in our work who are trying so hard to make it happen. And you can't fault them for that, right?
Sure.
We preach like work ethic and you got to work hard and you got to plan. No, that's all good. But almost always, and I'm certainly old enough to say this now, you look over your shoulder and you're like, look what God was doing that whole time. I might have even been planning and working against what he was doing, but he still did it.
Yeah.
And the thing that he wanted to happen, I believe, happened. I've been married to Diane, 48 years. I have 2 beautiful kids with grandkids. None of that would have happened if I would have decided to go back home when I really wanted to, or had we not opened weirdly for this band, their bass player not been leaving.
Yeah.
You think about those little pieces of providence all along the way, and all you can do is like bow your knee to it.
Yeah.
But that's what got me here.
Good Lord.
When you're this age, it takes a while to tell these stories, so shame on you for asking.
But they're still good. I'm glad you told it.
Thank you
for telling that. When you got here and you started playing for the band, what was that like? What was life on the road?
Yeah.
Did you play in the studio as well, or was it just on the road?
That was all on the road.
Okay.
The first time I'd ever really been paid money to play music.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible thing.
How much money are we talking?
Yeah. $175 a week.
Oh, yeah, bro.
I mean, think about that.
That's amazing.
I was eating tomato soup made of ketchup and hot water. You know that story.
I do.
And 3 months later was making $175 a week. My dad could not believe it. He's like, they're paying you to just play music.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I have to unload the gear and set it up and stuff. That made him feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, and I remember when they told me that amount, they said, and we provide your stage clothes, your shoes, and your strings.
Wow.
So
that's
bass
awesome.
strings, yeah. Paying for my bass strings was a perk of the job.
Man, okay.
So that was fun. And yeah, I honestly was overwhelmed. Like I'm not understanding this. Right? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I thought you were going to pay me. Of course you're not,
Yeah.
So between that happening and it being like, I'm getting paid to go play these shows with these people and meeting Diane and marrying her, my entire life changed so much. And maybe it's worth saying that Diane grew up in inner city Detroit. Her dad was a Detroit policeman. I grew up in very rural, small town, West Texas.
Yeah.
Our lives, our experience, our environments could not have been more different. She's a little older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I learned so much about life from Diane.
Yeah.
So my life was changing a lot, and I never expected to do anything at that time. How happy am I?
Yeah.
I've met the love of my life. I get paid $175 a week to play music. It was incredible. So what happens is in that era, so now we're like late 70s, almost no touring band out of Nashville used their live players to record.
Okay.
They use these session players that are still around, not in the way they used to be, but being a session player meant that you were available to play on people's recordings, bands, soloists, whatever, jingles, anything that needed music. So the first time this band recorded, they used session players. Of course, they didn't use us.
Yeah, sure.
The bass player that day, that first day, which I got to just go in and watch, was a guy named Jack Williams, who at that time was pretty much the A player in Nashville.
Okay.
Played on all kinds of stuff, played every day. Very good player, good reader, and kind of a older curmudgeonly guy, like not friendly, but he did. I met him and we talked about bass a little bit, like that was a point of interest for him.
Sure.
Then the next record, which now is people recorded a lot more often back then. This is maybe 6 months later.
Oh, wow, geez.
He's still he's the bass player on the session.
Okay.
I got to talk to him a little more about like, how did you get, to this place? And he had his own story there. But I would say, maybe there were at that time 50 guys who did 80% of the recorded music out of Nashville.
Wow.
50, 60 people. So it was not easy to break into.
Of course.
But his thing was like, has anybody ever heard you play? And I'm like, well, I mean, gigging around, not people who could ever give me a job. He says, well, you need to get a recording done of some of your work and have something that you can give to people. Like, this is how I sound, this is how I play. So I managed to get a little sort of demo tape together. He gave me 4 names of 3 of them were publishing companies.
That's awesome.
One was an indie producer that I just swallowed my pride because I was so bashful and backward and insecure, still am. And none of those 4 used me for anything. But that indie producer, the next day, somebody was talking to him about a bass player.
Wow.
And he said, hey, this guy came in yesterday. And that guy called me for something.
Oh, my gosh.
So again, there you go. But session playing, I found out, was very much probably like a lot of things in these lines of work. But if you manage to get a session and it goes halfway well, people will remember you.
Sure.
The next time the conversation comes up, which, as you know, these conversations are always going on. Well, who would be good to play on this? Or this guy canceled on me. Who can I get? If your name can come up, you can start to build some reputation as not just a guy who can play the date and play the music, but also a good hang and all the things that you need to be as a good session player, and you're learning that as you go along. So the road stuff, which the band that hired me, I had left them and was playing with other bands that first band that hired me, it was every weekend, like usually Thursday over Sunday, and a couple of trips a year that were either out west or up north that you might be gone a month or so. I started playing for bands that did less dates, which allowed me to woodshed some more and network a little more, meet some people. And it probably wasn't this perfect, but my road playing could go down as my session playing could go up. And eventually, now Diane was basically supporting us during this time. Sure enough, you take some tour or road dates and you get a call while you're out and, hey, could you come tomorrow? You're like, oh.
Yes.
So eventually you've got to stop the touring piece. And Diane worked at an office and supported us while I sat home and practiced and waited for the phone to ring.
Man.
It's tough. But eventually, Stephen, within a couple of years of that, I got to a place where I could make a living as a session player. And that lasted about 5 years probably. During that time, and I'm looking at a picture over your shoulder over there of me with before there was Logic, before there was Pro Tools, what preceded all that were what they called sequencers.
Okay.
So you could record a synthesizer into a sequencer, much like you would Pro Tools today. and it was a digital recorder. And then drum machines were a separate box.
Oh, yeah.
So I managed to get all three of those pieces and start to do one-man band. Cool. Because I had played some drums growing up. I understood drums. I could play some keys. And so I could offer myself as like, oh, you need a demo done? I can do it.
That's cool.
I can do you a track for $100. And rather than hiring a whole band. Now, it was prehistoric. I mean, it sounded, if I were to listen to some of that today, I would probably throw up. But I managed to start finding work that way. Then some of that and some of the indie production I had done had made its way to a guy who was running Word Records at that time. And that's sort of how my label career began.
That's a great place to stop.
Okay.
We're going to be back in a second, and we'll hear about John's journey into A&R.
Exciting. And we are synced.
We're dialed in. Welcome back. We're still talking about whatever comes up. We were about to talk about your journey into the label side of things in Nashville. Please regale us.
Oh, allow me to. I think we left off with this guy who had been a producer here in town. I had done some work for him as a player. And he wanted to take me to breakfast one morning, which was a little unusual. Producers and players don't necessarily do that much unless they're buddies, and we weren't necessarily buddies. But we talked. He's like, oh, what are you working on these days? And it was very casual, but I could tell like he's picking around a little bit, you know. And he had just taken the president role of Word Records, whose label offices were in Waco, Texas, but had just moved here, and they had hired him to run 4 labels that they had.
That's huge.
Yeah. Oof. And he was, you know, as the new leader would always do, he's trying to put the right people in places. And he's like, I'm going to need to hire an A&R guy, and I think you'd be good at it, which is an interesting thing to say to somebody, right?
I think so.
And here we are again, just like sleeping in my car. I did not want to say, what is A&R?
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was. So I just tried to fake it, like, now what do you think? You know, tell me more.
Yeah.
And he never, though, got to the place of saying what it was. Mm-hmm. So I had to, this was pre-Google, I had to call somebody to find out what A&R was. And interestingly, that guy that I called, who knew me a little bit, but was in the music industry, was like, I don't think that's a fit for you. Well, this guy just said he thought I'd be good at it.
Yeah.
So as this other guy that I called described it to me, I thought, ew, I don't know. You know, I'm in my late 30s. I'd never had a real job.
Wow.
I'd played music my whole life. I'd never been in an office or anything like that. So the second sort of follow-up to that meeting was sort of about that. Like, why do you think I would be good at this? Like, Neil was very sensitive, and I'm so glad for this, about the sort of life transition I would be making. I should say, we just had Kelsey, our firstborn. And that does something to a husband when he becomes a father.
Sure.
The sort of provider instincts come up in you. And, you know, as grateful as I was for being able to make a living as just a session player, there's something still that's like, well, you don't know if the phone's going to ring next week, right? I'm booked out for 4 weeks, but what's after that?
Yeah.
And that didn't feel comfortable or adequate for me to be a provider. That was me, you know? And of course, my dad had told me one time that a man is a success if his kids never go hungry.
That's good.
You talk about a generational statement, right?
Yeah.
That's not the way things would be defined these days. But, it was me and two older sisters, and we never went hungry. And I think he went to heaven as a man who believed he was a success because of that, even though he worked in the oil field for 40 years. So I began to feel like maybe so, maybe this is what Neil saw. I think when I said, what makes you think I would be good at it? Most of it was experience I had had in the studio, understanding music. I'd taught myself to read music. I could speak recording language. I could speak audio language by this time.
Okay.
I had been super involved with, mixing and mastering as a producer by this time. And I think he saw something in my personality. Whatever he thought was a good personality for an A&R person, he saw that as well. So, I don't know, 6 weeks or so of talking about it, I took the job. And that was in September of 1987. And by December, I thought, I have really screwed up. And thank God for Neil, who really helped me navigate it. But it was a much larger transition than I thought it would be, partly because I was A&R for the Word label. There were 3 other labels under the Word banner. Word was there was a format of music back then called inspirational, and Sandy Patty was sort of the leading voice of that kind of music. I didn't work with Sandy, but the rest of the Word label had about 20 artists on it. And I made records on almost all of them. I think I made 21 records my first year.
Were you the only A&R employed?
Well, Neil also did some A&R.
There was the 2 of you.
Yeah.
And he was doing Sandy.
And he was running the label, running 4 labels. So
that's a lot.
Here's the catch, though. Lord. Most of those people, none of them I signed.
Yes.
Some of them I had played on previous records of theirs, but none of them I would have never listened to their music out of enjoyment, and probably not people I would have signed.
Yeah.
Just not where I was musically, But the idea of making records on them, Neil would just be like, your job is to help them make the best record they can make. So find them the best songs, get them with the best producers, like commit to them feeling good about the record they made. And that was so good for me.
Yeah.
And especially, in a year to make that many records with that many diverse people was really good for me. He also had this idea that I shouldn't sign anything my first year. So that was all good. And by the time that first year had gone around, I think I began to feel like maybe this is work that I could get good at and enjoy doing. That really never, though, truly came around until I did sign my first artist.
Yeah.
A girl named Cindy Morgan. Shout out to Cindy if she's listening or watching, and still a great friend today. And as you find out kind of quickly, like, it went well with Cindy.
Yeah.
So my first signing went well, which means she sold, right?
Yes.
and had 3 hits off her first record.
Man.
And that's when you go, oh, well, check me out.
Yeah.
And you find out pretty quickly. I don't think the industry is this much this way anymore, but back then it was really this way. Like baseball, I think we've talked about this. If a batter gets up and hits 3 out of 10 pitches, he's in the freaking Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, the calls I started getting after Cindy's first single was doing well, like, I'm the A&R genius all of a sudden. What? I got lucky. And, you would say that to some people, like, oh no, like everybody's saying that you need to be at Word and work with John Mays. This happened like within 6 months of her record coming out.
Wow.
I think that speaks to everybody's desperation to work with whoever they think would make them successful, right?
Yeah.
And that's still a thing.
Absolutely.
As you know. So,
if we could take a brief moment.
Yep.
can you talk to me and the people about the difference emotionally of working with an artist that you have signed as an A&R and then working with artists who are on your label, but you didn't sign them, but you still have to do the work for them anyway?
Yeah. Well, you know this, Stephen, but there's an investment of yourself that you make in an artist that you sign that you do not make of one you inherit. So the investments you make when you inherit someone are sort of your time and energy, of your the best work that you've done to that point that could help them in any way. But the investments you make in someone you sign are more on a level of passion, emotion, belief. You believe that you need to do good work in someone that you didn't sign, but you believe in the person, which is a motivation to do the good work. And it calls something out of you that just an assignment doesn't do. So, I mean, by the time Cindy's record came out, we had been friends for a couple of years, you know, and we knew each other pretty well. I was learning the value of relationship, and she was part of my family. Knew her mom and dad pretty well, and you know, we were invested in each other. So that's probably the difference is I could almost say what it cost you, right?
Ooh, yeah.
But what it costs you when you sign someone is something you are so willing to pay. And you know this really well. Some industry people would know this, but you kind of want to get to a place that I didn't know you could get to. Like, you will take a bullet for that person. You will take it to the wall as far as you can go to support that person with whatever you have in you, because that's how much you believe in them. And almost this weird sense of like, you would be so disappointed if people didn't get to hear this music and this person doing this music.
Yeah.
Like, I want the world to hear this. And if it doesn't work, they're missing out.
Yeah.
Right. That sort of thing. So that's probably the best answer I could give you to that question.
You can't buy belief. You can't like put it on someone else, even if you work with them. Like, you might love someone and I might not get it, but like, it's not about me. It's like, no, I believe in this person and what they have to say through their songs, or if it's not music, through their art, however they're expressing themselves. There is just something about it.
That'll preach right there.
I think so. Okay, where were we? Cindy's popping off. People are coming to you, be like, we got to work with this guy.
That's probably an exaggeration.
It's probably not.
But I started getting calls from people that are like, I don't even know you.
Yeah.
And they're acting like they're my friend.
Oh,
right?
Geez.
And pitching me ideas and artists. And literally that had never happened to me in my life until one successful thing was happening. And suddenly the view of the industry toward me changed. And it is going too far to say people wanted to work with me. I just think they want to be associated with anybody that's doing something that they think is working.
Yeah.
Right? And that's no different today.
Sure.
So I just was young and too inexperienced to realize, and I don't think Neil ever said, hey, get ready if this works, because you're going to have friends coming out of the woodwork. And people who are calling, man, I've been friends with John for la la la. Like, we really? So
that's great. Okay, so Cindy does well. You're at Word for how many years?
8 years.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you made a big move to a rival company, doing the same work, but it was a big move.
Yeah, not quite the same work, because when I moved over to a label called Sparrow, I became head of the A&R department. As long as I was at Word, I reported to a guy who was the head of the A&R department. So that's a new layer of leadership and oversight that was not required of me when I was at Word.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a sweet time, like when your only responsibility are those people that you've signed and are working with. everything that you can bring to your work goes into those people. And that's a sweet time. But also, when you become a leader of a department, you can start to think of the people that are working with you in that way too.
Sure.
But it just gets divided up some, right? It gets a little diluted and watered down because you're still working with artists and still care so much about them. But now this team of people that you're also responsible for hopefully their growth. And there's only so much of you to go around, and you're trying to make decisions about how much time you spend on this or that. So I would probably say it's fair to say I miss the days of not being responsible for anything but the artist I had brought to the table and felt responsible for.
Yeah.
There was a time, I don't know if we'll get into this, but you and I are fans of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
It's on my list.
Okay, it's been a lot to me over the years, but it's not one of the principles or habits, but it's a principle that you focus on your circle of concern. No, I'm sorry, your circle of influence, not your circle of concern. Circle of concern can be so huge and so distracting. But what do you actually have influence over? And Covey in the book even talks about sometimes that's just you.
Yeah.
You're the only person you have influence over.
As simple as that is, that blew my mind. I was like, right.
Yeah.
It's true.
But in those word days, as my career was growing, I had, by the time I left, I had 5 artists that I was focusing on. And I took their pictures and put them on my wall. And there were times when I was so tempted to step out of my circle of influence into the concern that I'm like, I want to focus on those 5 people, or 2 of them were bands, and think that's my company. Like, that is why I come to work. That's the reason I show up every day. And that's what I'm responsible for. That's my circle of influence. I have some influence over some of those people. I think all of them at that time.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
That was that came out of the book, and it was a big thing for me. And we'll just go ahead and complete this loop of this story.
Let's stay there.
That I left the company then probably 2 years after I read the book. And I read the book several times in the beginning, just as you know, it takes a bit to absorb a lot of it. But if I can say this in humility, and it is the way I mean it, by the time I left, I was one of the most influential people in the organization, because Covey says, if you just focus on that circle of influence, you'll watch it grow.
Yeah.
And it will grow into that circle of concern. And it totally did. Now, I wasn't doing it to like, I'm going to test this principle, right? I realized it when it was time to go, and I'm having to go through the resignation thing and all that. It's a painful thing. And remember, those 5 people, like, I'm leaving them too.
Yeah.
So it's like tearing flesh to leave people that you have invested in that way. Felt like it was the right thing to do at that time. So it was amazing to watch that principle at work and watch them try to keep me there, which was a product of being influential in the company, in the larger concern. But my goodness, what a useful way of thinking. Like, is this a concern or something I have some influence over? Just to ask that question when you are, your anxiety reaches a certain level, or you're disturbed about something that you're like literally staying up at night, and that thought will hit you. Do I have any influence over this? No. I want to go to sleep. Right? And hope that the work I'm doing, the influence I do have, will eventually someday grow into that circle of concern, and I can have some influence over. I got to watch that happen.
Man.
In real time. It was pretty neat.
That's so wild. Well, let's stick around on 7 Habits.
Uh-oh.
I mean, it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
But I did want to read some of the mission statement that I made because I had not read the book before. When did we first meet? 2021?
21?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe around there. When we met, you sent me the book after our first meeting. You were like, "Oh, have you read this?" I was like, "No, never heard of it." So you sent it to me. I was like, "Oh, that's really a nice gesture of him." And I was like, "This has got to be important." I don't think I've ever been sent a book after a conversation. So I was like,
Really?
I should probably read this. And I started it, and it was immediately like, what have I done? This is too much. This is too thoughtful. I'm not ready for this. But I just kept going because like it's well written.
Oh.
And like easy to digest. I feel like he did so well of like saying things like 3 times. Like, okay, yeah, here's what I'm talking about. Here's an example. Here's what I'm talking about. And by the 3rd time, I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh, that's what he's talking about.
Exactly. So like one of the most daunting sections of the book, I think, was Covey challenges you to create your own mission statement. Kind of like companies do, but for you as a person.
The first habit is begin with the end in mind.
Yes. And this was just terrifying to me. Like I read the chapter and at the end of the chapter, he's like, okay, go for it. Create your own.
Yeah.
I finished that chapter and I was like, this is going to take me a minute. So it took me a week.
Oh yeah.
I put the book down for a week and I was just like thinking of things and like reading some things like the Bible or something or some other things that have inspired me here and there, some songs that came to mind. Like, man, what am I putting in this thing? Like, this is so much. And like, no one cares. I could have just not done this and just kept reading. Yeah. But like, it really challenged me. I was like,
yeah,
I have to do this. And it was like the most introspective thing I've ever done, I guess, before this show.
Yeah. Do you remember the illustration he takes you through?
Oh, you tell. You're so good at telling. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I found it really helpful. Mm-hmm. It kind of got me over the hump of being where you're talking about being, because I think if you've never thought about a personal mission statement, everybody gets to this place. You're just, what?
Yeah.
But, and he does it so well.
He really does.
Like there's probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 pages of this where it's basically you're envisioning a scenario where you go to a funeral and he even talks about the kind of church you're in. You're walking down the aisle and you take a seat on the front row and you really can see it the way he sets it up. And once you get there and seated, you realize it's your funeral. You've attended your funeral. And there are 4 people on the platform who are each going to get up and eulogize you. One is family, one is community, one is work, and one is faith, or some sort of group you would belong to. He would say your faith community. Others that might not work for, but some sort of, it might be a 12-step group or anything like that, but somebody from that group. So all 4 of those people get up and they start talking about your life. And Covey would say, this is who you want to be. Write this down.
God, it's good, man. And like, that's the beginning of the chapter too. It's just like, okay, what's going on? And then he hits you with that hook. It's like, oh God.
Yeah. So you sort of write furiously. Like for me, you're not married yet, but like, what do I want my wife to say about me at the end of my days? Well, you feel so far from that, right? Yeah. Like, here's what I want, but here's the truth. And that gap is so big. But you just keep writing, that's his encouragement. And like my coworkers, what do I want them to say about me when I'm gone? I mean, I don't know. For me, that was probably a handwritten 10 or 12 pages in a notebook. So then the hard part, and this is really the hard part, is condensing that into something that's portable and memorable. And that's what takes so long to do. Because I remember my first one was like, I tried to cover it all. And I want to be this, I want to be balanced. I want to be this while being this. I want to be this while being this. And there was like 8 of those. Like,
interesting.
I I don't know. What does this mean? Uh, did you feel like you try to cover all your bases?
In the chapter, there's some helpful things. There's something called roles and goals. So just like identifying what roles you play, like you're saying, like coworker or husband, friend, whatever. So I use that as a very helpful template. Mm-hmm. But like those things aren't necessarily the thing I go to. I have like an opening overview statement and then something that I don't think is in the book, but just something I felt led to do. I have like a legacy statement. So like throughout my life.
That's good.
What do I want to be known for?
Yeah.
And I wanted to read those. And
awesome.
I'm curious if you would share more of your mission statement after this, but maybe this will spark some interest. The overview is, my mission is to make a difference in the lives of others through expressions of kindness and enrich my own life by continually realizing my talents. Mm-hmm. I think the end of that, continually realizing my talents, I put that in there because I've been so good at just being like, taking a back seat or not living up to things that I'm naturally gifted in because someone else could do it, or I'd rather have someone else take the stage, be in the spotlight. Like, I don't need to be the one to do whatever, even though I can, I'll let someone else do that. Mm-hmm. But in order to be my best self, I need to dive into those things and like, I shouldn't hide them, whatever.
That's good.
And the legacy statement is, my legacy is an inspiration, but not because of my accolades. By being a champion of peace and inclusion, I allowed new voices to be heard in areas they may not have had an opportunity to. I was a confidant who truly cared for those around me. I think that's the two sentences that I feel like if someone could say that at my funeral, mm-hmm. I've done it.
Now, the legacy statement, you came up with that on your own, right?
I did.
Or like separating the mission statement into kind of two ideas.
Yeah, I think the legacy was just like, when I'm gone, mm-hmm. what will people say? The mission is like, while I'm here, how do I get to the legacy?
Yeah. I like that. Could you say it without reading it?
Of course not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot in the middle here of just some roles and goals stuff. More detailed stuff of like, how do I complete the mission? But like, I don't look at that. It's just like the overview and the legacy. Yeah. That's the main thing for me.
Well, my prediction is, and I believe there's, especially for people who read the book, I hope we can talk about this in 10 or 15 years to see if it's sticky for you. Mm. The book, the concepts. And if it is, I would put money that would be greatly condensed.
Sure.
It might not be all the way condensed to something that's like this, but it's on the way to being more and more condensed because the longer you live, the closer you get to the heart of the matter and the things that are the most important in your life. And maybe as importantly, the things you let go of, maybe more important, the things that you thought you would try to do or be good at that you realize as you get older, no, I'm going to let that go. I don't, maybe even I wish that could have been true, but it's not. So I'm going to let that one go. So in answer to your question, my mission statement now, and it has greatly evolved over all these years. This book came out in 84. Okay. No, 87. So I don't know how many times I've read it, but like now I know it well enough. Like, oh, I think that's in this chapter,
Yeah.
To love well, even when I'm not well loved. That's it is good. For me. It covers so much. Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of what my mission statement had been, especially in the beginning, was a clanging cymbal, right? So the greatest of these is love. I have wrestled with my highest values being excellence, being honesty, truthfulness. The greatest of these is love. If I can live out a week where I love well, even when I'm not well loved, I think I'm doing all right. But that's 35 years of the first thing, which was all this. I want to be this and that, and this and that, and like starting with that. And it's funny, I don't even remember what some of those were, but knowing me, it was probably stuff like I want to be creative but financially responsible. You know, like these things that are like different kinds of people. I wanted to be all of them.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you know, as you age, you learn what you are and what you aren't, and what you can let go of. You don't have to try to be anymore. So that's the answer to my mission statement question and why it is what it is. You know what I don't have though, that I would encourage you to have, is the process. I wish I had the first one. I think I do have it up in the attic. Did I show it to you?
No, I've never seen it.
I think I have it in the attic in a memory box. Okay. Literally printed on a piece of paper that I carried with me in a notebook for years. And like would get it out, like it just seems so hard, right? Yeah. Not that loving well, even when you're not well loved, isn't. That's hard too. But like I know now I would have never been able to do, those things. But still, I wish I had kept like that and all the process to now what is one sentence. Yeah. But that led to, or at least it informed how I was able to come up with a mission statement for Centricity. Like you realize, it can't be very many words, and it's got to get to the point. It's got to be memorable. Like you can't work too hard to have to think about it. Yeah. And that, I think now, you go through the funeral, you define your roles and goals. You're probably not going to write that, you know, in your first few years. But you start writing it, and there's something in that right now that motivates you. Yeah, absolutely. Toward who you want to be, and that's valuable. But eventually, over the years, you'll be able to. Some of it will melt away. Some of it you realize I'm going to, take a chisel and get rid of that one. And eventually, it will just become, I think, more of the life that you're living, and how you hope it ends. We'll see. Yeah. And we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Dang it, I clapped again. Hope that doesn't show up. We were talking about 7 Habits. Thank God. But in regards to your story, you had moved over to Sparrow. You were leading an A&R team. I'd love to get to the centricity part of that story at some point. How did you end up there with a brand new company being created? Yeah. Probably the worst time in music history. Hey, way to set that up. That's true, because Centricity was birthed during a time that some of your viewers and listeners might know about, some would not care about, but suffice it to say that the music industry completely melted down as we had always known it when somebody figured out how to digitize a music file, right? And load it up into their computer so it could be shared to other people. And then Sean Fanning and his engineers figured out a way to build a sort of a network, a sharing network around that, so that if you have a song on your computer that I want, you can share it with me. I can go on the software and download it. Pretty great idea, but radically imposing on the way that the industry had been set up. Yeah. Where you had to buy a CD for $20 to get the one song that you wanted. Yeah. Right. And that created, a windfall for the music industry during the late 90s. The amount of money that was being made with, so many, not just new releases, but people who had cassettes and 8 tracks and all that stuff way back. CDs sounded so good, they rebought their music again, so it was, for the labels, it was an amazing heyday. And if it's worth saying for the future, something that the industry did wrong was to not go to Sean Fanning and say, hey, that's illegal because all this material is copyrighted. But that's a pretty good idea. Like, is there a way we could partner together on this and incorporate what you're doing, make it legal, and offer it to our customers? And no, they acted out of sheer defense and protection. You can't go after people for wanting to protect their copyrights, right? And if you're the songwriter or the producer or the artist, and someone is downloading your music for free, there's no way you're going to make your share of it. Yeah. You get it.
Yeah.
But that someone wasn't thinking at a higher level than that to say, this is something that could lead to something. It could be good. And sometimes I feel that way still. Like, is the industry quick to shut ideas down because it's not what we do right now? Right?
Yeah.
We do that as people too. But so I had left Sparrow and gone to a label called Benson. That's its own long story of when I first moved to town. The band that hired me recorded for a label called Benson, and at the time was the leading Christian music label in Nashville, and run by a guy named Bob Benson, a family member who ran it, who had great influence on me, not firsthand influence. Maybe this is good to say to people, but Bob Benson was like no other man I'd ever observed before. And for me, I had grown up, like so many of us grow up, I think, where my church was a box, my private life was another box,
Sure.
My relationships were a box, my work was a box. Bob Benson in front of me, just observing, and I'm a 19-year-old bass player, and he's the president of a record company that wears a suit.
Yeah.
And his life was so integrated. It was all one man. And he was so freely talking about his faith and his family and his work, all as one thing. And it made such an impression on me. And I was so insecure and so bashful, I just couldn't do what I wanted to do, which would be to go up to him and say, how could I learn from you? How could we go get coffee? I don't even know if I knew of that concept.
Sure.
But could I spend some time with you occasionally? I didn't even know of a mentoring concept, I don't think. But I didn't. And all I got from Bob was what I caught from watching him and being around him occasionally at the label. And some at the very end of his life in his hospital room. But I at his funeral, his wife Peggy, I told this story to her and said, I've always regretted not asking Bob. And she said, oh, he would have loved that. He loves spending time with younger guys. He would have done that in a heartbeat, or some version of that.
Yeah.
And the disappointment, I felt like, oh, you fool. Like, what could you have gotten out of this man? Now he's gone, You won't ever get to ask him that. So maybe a word to the wise out there that you probably never feel comfortable about going up to someone and asking if you can get coffee with them, spend some time with them. And if you feel a little bit of that hand in your back to do it, do it.
Yeah.
They may be gone. You don't know. So when I used to play racquetball all the time, there was a lady that worked at the gym where the racquetball courts were, and every morning on the back of her neck, I would see it. She had the tattoo, "No regret." And I know that's a fun cultural statement, but it's like, oh, you're going to regret that.
On the back of her neck.
On the back of her neck, no regret.
Who's that for? I guess everyone else, because she can't see it.
But I think it's the first time I'm like, oh, I have so many regrets. So many things I said I wish I could take back. So many things I wish I would have said that I didn't say. So many relationships I handled the wrong way that if I could go back, I would handle it differently. All these things being major life regrets. I feel so much better about saying that than saying, oh, I would do it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time, right? I've never felt that way. And one of my regrets would be that I didn't move toward a guy like Bob Benson and get that. That was a whole side story.
No, yeah, sure.
Okay. So Bob passes away. The label is bought and sold 4 or 5 times, becomes a shell of what it had been in the 80s and 90s. And when I was at Sparrow, they bought another label called Star Song that they sort of put me in charge of to run, and it was going well. And when I was doing that, I get a call from the head of the company that had been the last company that bought Benson, called Zamba. And they had a Christian music division called Providence. And he's like, hey, I'm going to cut to the chase. I want you to come be president of Benson.
Wow.
And, there's so many sides to what I felt in that moment. There's a theological side, there's a philosophical side, and of course, there's just a career side. But sort of the philosophical part was, of course, like, this is why I'm alive. This is why that band hired me and moved me to Nashville, so that I would come this full 360 thing and run Benson and bring it back to its prior state, because I knew Bob and I knew the culture. I didn't know Bob that well, but I was influenced by Bob. And I knew how the culture felt around Benson Records. I'll show you sometime a picture of their building they built in the 70s, like would rival anything today.
Wow.
Like, just, you walk in this building and you just feel this incredible, you get this incredible impression of who they were and being the dominant market leader, So I jumped ship quick. And Stephen, as you know, it was for 2 years. And the silo of not being able to make anything happen. I could not. Everything I signed failed. I couldn't get a staff together that I felt was really good and on top of things and solid. And these changing market conditions. Those two things combined resulted in what was probably the right business decision, which was to shut the label down. The label, it started as a publishing company, a songbook company by Bob's great-grandfather. But it was 98 years old the year they closed it down. And yes, I'm the guy that closed the door.
How much of that are you feeling like, this is all my fault? I ruined this.
Stephen, like, what was I thinking? Why did I do this? And is just a public embarrassment. Because at this time, this was 2001, there were publications in our industry. There was a magazine that came out every week that had news articles in it. There was like a billboard called CCM Update that was just for Christian music, that was just happenings in the industry. And it was kind of a big deal for me to leave where I had been with things going as well as they were to go take this job. And I was following in the footsteps of people much smarter and more experienced than me. So I think people were like, oh, John's going over there. And I would explain, oh, no, I knew Bob Benson. Like, that was going to be the answer. But it was public that the label got shut down, and all the interviews were wanting to be about what happened. And it was embarrassing, right? And yes, what you're talking about, such a giant disappointment in myself that I couldn't pull it off. And the legacy of this label now and all these years of it being what it was is now gone. And literally the building is torn down now.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it was a sad, sad day in my life. It was my son's 4th birthday. And we had a party for him planned at Chuck E. Cheese that night.
Amazing.
And I'm like, I cannot tell Diane and the kids what's happened. Because it was like on a Thursday afternoon, that they told me. And so I'm just going to wait till after the birthday party. So Chuck E. Cheese is not one of my favorite places. I hate that rat that runs around in there.
Oh man!
I had to fake it, for 2 hours in that place.
Wow.
So, okay, I'm saying all that to set up the centricity thing, but because it was sort of public, I got a lot of calls and a lot of people curious about what was next for me. And Stephen, I had no idea.
Yeah.
With the way the industry was going and this crisis that was happening, a lot of labels were being shut down, a lot of good people being laid off and, just going to work in other industries.
Yeah.
So when people would ask me, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like early 40s, nobody's going to hire a 40-year-old A&R guy, especially in that climate. So I would tell people I didn't know. I got this call from this guy in Seattle named Scott Anderson, who's a producer that we're still sort of associated with in lo-fi hymnal. And he's asking me, and I'm telling him I don't know. And I truly thought probably my life in music was over.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, he starts telling me this story about this family he knows up there who had asked him to produce a record on a worship leader up there, a girl named Jamie Jamgosian, and they want to start a label. And I told him I would call you and see if you want to talk to him.
Okay.
And I'm like, Scott, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's, it wasn't just Nashville, it was worldwide.
Yeah.
And certainly LA and New York were being hit hard. And I'm like, just tell them, this is what's going on. And I don't know, I probably didn't hear anything back for a couple of months. And
oh, wow.
The next call was, hey, I'm calling again. They would love to meet you. If they came to Nashville, would you meet with them? Oh, did you tell them? And he said, yes. And come to find out, this guy is an entrepreneur. He had already built and sold successful businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just part of the wiring of most entrepreneurs. When they get an idea, it's hard to take no for an answer. Like they charge that thing,
Yeah.
I am not an entrepreneur, had never started anything in my life, probably scared of trying to do something like that. So I'm going to leave out a lot of the story.
Sure.
A lot of the people already know it that would be listening to this, but I met with them, told them the stories of what was going on, but eventually they decided they were going to do this with or without me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how strategic this was on their part, but we had a sort of ending conversation where they said, if you can't be our guy there in Nashville, would you help us find someone?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Diane was the one that night that was like, well, you don't want to help them find someone. Like, there's probably something here that you're not paying enough attention to. And so it was some probably healthy tension of being super skeptical.
Absolutely.
Not about them, but personally at this time, because I felt like I'd gotten to know them a little bit, but just skeptical. There's no way this could work. And there were several stories by this time of people with the means starting labels, hiring staffs, signing rosters, and within a year pulling up stakes and leaving town because they couldn't make any money.
Yeah.
And I would tell them those stories. I even tried to set up a meeting with them, and one of those people, which I don't think ever happened, but thank God they did not listen to me, and they had their own agenda. And as hard as I pushed back, it was God's design and purpose for me to meet these people and for me to I never felt like I was trying to be stubborn or that I thought I knew better or anything like that.
Sure.
They were coming at this with a freedom of imagine what could be.
Yeah.
I was coming at it like I've experienced
I've
what it has
imagined
been
for you.
Yeah. And, I've learned that from him over the years that it helps to think that way
Sure.
sometimes, to resist the realities of even a marketplace or a business, things you can measure even sometimes and go, yeah, but what's possible?
Yeah.
What does this make possible? And so we got in business together. This room that we're sitting in is the first Centricity office. We worked out of here, I think, for almost 4 years. And uh, it was me. Then Diane would start to help me administratively. She has been a vital part of Centricity since the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lumrys had a lady working for them named Karen that began to oversee things. And we started, and God has done what he's done with it.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable to me that that's going on 23 years ago. But here's maybe a button for this story.
Okay.
I was standing at the sink down the hall one morning, and Diane is like, you got some blood. I was brushing my teeth. You got some blood right here. And I open my mouth, and there's some blood in my mouth. And she's like, you're going to the dentist. You are not going to the office. You got a bad tooth or something. So I end up in the dentist's office a few hours later, and he's looking in my mouth, and he says these words, are you under a lot of stress? And I'm like, I don't know, normal, I guess. And he goes, well, I see this sometimes. It's probably in your sleep, but you're chewing your tongue. And it's like your tongue's all bloody.
Good Lord.
And so I call Diane and I say, hey, this is all it was. I'm going to the office. She's like, no, you're not.
Wow.
And we end up walking downtown Franklin, just like Diane's trying to care for me, the best way she knows how. And on that walk, I said something like, golly, Diane, wouldn't it be amazing just to have a small little label without all this corporate pressure and all these budgets and all the worries of making your number in the first quarter, and just have a few people that you love working with, that make good music. Gosh, I wish it could be that way, And Stephen, that's what Centricity has been.
Yeah.
And I'll take it further to say that thing that I envisioned of I could restore Benson back to the way Bob did it. No, I couldn't, but I could build Centricity in the way, some of those same values. And so much of Centricity's culture is about what Bob Benson did in those early days that I was just able to catch.
Wow.
So thank God I got to be around him and, learn from a distance from him. Too bad that I could have learned so much more, but I hope that he is looking down and smiling at what happened with his influence on me.
Yeah. Thank you for telling that.
Yeah.
While you were talking, I was thinking about purpose, like moments where the idea of that is challenged. Like, that you're here to do something, and you wanted to have a music job, but you had the highs of being at work with Cindy and people are calling you, just wanting to be around someone that's working. But then you had Benson and nothing's working for 2 years.
The other end.
Can you speak to me and the people about how to know or try to be secure in yourself that, okay, I'm doing work that I know I should be doing, even when things are going great or even when things are going poorly? This is the work I'm meant to do for some reason.
It's a great question, and I think it speaks to what I would say calling.
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever been sure of my purpose.
Interesting.
But over the years, I have become more and more settled in what I would say my calling. Calling's a weird word because you can start trying to study it in the Bible.
Sure.
And it's probably not what the evangelical church has made it. Because I think we talk about it today mostly in vocational terms, right? But you start studying it in the Bible, and like literally it's, Moses calling, like literally calling someone to do something. It wasn't, maybe it was towards some vocational thing, but that's the way we refer to it today. But for me, I feel like calling has been, I'm going to align your story and your gifting. And I'm going to align those things so that they sort of point to something. And for me, it was a life in music. And my story combined with what gifting I had. And Stephen, you're all too aware of this right now as we sit here. A&R will call things out of you that not only do you not think you're capable of doing, you don't want to do them. And like, don't put me in that position. This week you've been in that sort of scenario where like, I'm not qualified to deal with this situation with this person or whatever. And you step up to it. And when you step up to it and you've done it, I hope this is your experience, that you say, maybe there is some of that in me. Maybe I am learning that this calling also includes this piece that I never thought was there. So you're discovering this as you go along. So purpose, my purpose is to love the Lord with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and my neighbor as myself. My calling has been more about the things that God gifted me with, even as a young person, and the story He gave me, even the bad parts of it, and Him aligning those two things to create situations for me that if I said yes to them, I'd be there for it, and I would be able to do more than I thought I could do with those things. Another picture that I've had in my head for a long time. Purpose and calling, to me, a lot of times is like a river. So our job is to get in the river.
Okay.
The river's going somewhere. It's always flowing. You really don't have any control over that. But your job is to get in. And all right, now for a creative, that might mean like I'm going to show up. I'm going to create the thing. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do the work. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if it's any good or not. I don't know if people will like it, if I will like it. But I'm getting in, and I'm all wet now. So where is this going? So again, I'm saying this so much, but the older you get, and I'm glad I can say that these days, the older you get, the more you trust the path of the river. And there are tributaries that go here and there. And you know how sometimes you can look at a river and go, oh, look, there's a stream running off of this river. Oh, it reconnects way down there, 2 states later. And you might have made one of those journeys, but you look over your shoulder and go, the river has taken me where I needed to go. And I'm glad I got in. And what getting in looks like is probably different for a lot of people. But I would refer back to what are those things that you feel like you have gifting for? Combine them with your story. And those will probably tell you the beginning steps that you need to know about, here's what it looks like for me to jump in. And you and I both know so many creatives that are still haven't gotten in the water, or they want to control the way the river flows. And you don't have a lot of control over that. So those are my thoughts on purpose and calling for now. Ask me next week.
Yeah. And on that note, we will take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. we have finally reached the moment where we're getting into the questions. Thank you for sticking around this long. Or if you're smart, you'll be breaking this up in sections and just come in for a little bit, come back, whatever.
Yeah.
John, how you doing so far?
You have to tell me.
I think you're doing great.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay, question 1. Do you remember when we first met and what you thought about me?
I certainly remember when we first met.
Okay.
And probably several thoughts. The first one that comes to mind is that you were interested in learning more about the music business. And I hope I can say this, but you were delivering pizzas.
I was.
And that made such an impression on me. Probably because so many people, guys especially, moved to town and like, hey, here I am.
Interesting.
I can't get a job because I have to make music.
Okay.
And I gotta, if a gig comes up, I gotta be able to go play it. And a lot of these people are guys with wives and kids, you know. So you impressed me first, probably, or at least it's what comes to mind first, that you were willing to work and not just work, but do that job.
Sure.
Delivering pizzas while during the day you did what you knew to do to create relationships. And I felt like we could be friends early, like you were a good guy and somebody that would be a fun hang. Let's see, what other things come to mind? We met at Sonic.
Yes, I remember that. We met at Sonic, and
which is one of my favorite places to meet.
I love Sonic. I have always loved Sonic because when I was a kid, of course, there was the mystique of you had the car hops coming and arriving on the rollerblades.
Yeah.
And like, that was so cool. And I couldn't roller skate or blade, so I was like, oh man, this is great. They've got it locked in. So I've always loved Sonic because of that, even though they don't really do that anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
But my go-to drink, now it's evolved, but it's always been an ocean water in some form. So like that was my go-to. I think I ordered it and you were like, oh.
You got your Sonic
what's
down.
up. Now it's an ocean water with no ice, add real strawberries.
No ice.
No ice.
But Sonic, it's
already
about
cold.
the ice.
I don't like the Sonic ice.
Oh, Stephen. You guys, he and I, this is almost one every day
True.
of these. But maybe we should say that there's Sonic, and then there's the Williamson County Sonic, which is just behind our office that we can walk to.
Yeah.
That's just very fancy for a Sonic.
It is on another level.
Yeah, has real patio furniture that you sit on. But you know, I have a memory of us doing that. Did we talk about the internship in that meeting?
We did not. So I remember the first time it was just sharing stories of how we got to where we are. Yeah. And at the end, you were like, have you read this book? I was like, no. So you sent it to me. You asked for my address and you sent me the book. That was great.
You know, I wish I did remember, but I don't remember what you would have said in your story that would have triggered. I wonder if this book would be helpful to him.
I don't know. Yeah.
You know, it could have just been because your collegiate history is scattered, shall we say. And
all right.
And maybe I always feel like I have some sympathy for people who struggle in college because I didn't even go, you know, and I feel like they're trying to find something, changing schools or majors or whatever it is. They're trying to find the thing that resonates for them. And when really, like, there's so much in that book that is the college education that you need. I feel like.
Yeah.
So maybe that was it, you know, the part of your sort of wandering through your college years and nothing really sticking. I also remember a sense of, isn't it cool that John Sell was a guy that I had brought on and sort of, you know, in some ways mentored and worked as a guy who worked for me, worked to teach him the role. And now he was the guy sort of mentoring you.
Yeah.
and how cool that feels.
Yeah.
Right. That you give and it shall be given. Like it keeps passing down. And I do remember feeling good about that. And probably like, hey, John Sell must believe in this guy. There's something here. Like, let's meet again.
Yeah. I don't remember feeling like, oh my gosh, this is John Mays. This is a big meeting. Which it would have been at the time for me. Like I was still just getting to know people. And you're a person of influence who has been around for a while and has great stories and insight. But I didn't feel nervous or scared going into it. Maybe it's because it was at Sonic.
Yeah.
So I was at a home field advantage for me. But it was like, oh, this guy's cool. And then during the meeting, after I left, I was like, man, what an insightful, wise guy. I really like him. I remember you cried during the meeting.
Oh.
I don't remember about what exactly.
Of course, now you're like, so.
Yeah. But at the time, I was like, that was really touching. Like, he really cares about, I don't remember what you were talking about. But he obviously really cares about. His eyes, it's so good. But I remember that being a rare occurrence. And it's probably for the best. But like, I hadn't had a lot of industry meetings where people are tenderly crying about some part of their story. Do you remember our second meeting?
No.
It was at Curio.
Yeah.
And it was like maybe 7 months later because it took me that long to read the book.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to reach out to you again until I'd finished it. But it's
amazing.
It took me that long to finish
which
it.
You didn't. Did I say something like you should finish this and then we'll meet again?
I think you said like you should read this.
Well,
and I took it as I should read this before I meet him again.
And be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably didn't feel that way, but
I think I emailed you. Maybe I still have it. I could look for it.
Yeah.
But like and said like, hey, I finished the book. Let's just talk about our favorite parts. So we met at Curio, grabbed coffee, and we just did that. We never talked about music before you offered me the internship.
Yeah.
In that meeting. But yeah, I remember saying like, I feel like my mission statement's too long. And you're like, yeah, that's how I felt too. But like, you wrote yours like on a mountaintop for the first one. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a lot about highlights of the book. And then you asked me to do the internship. I was like, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. And even did that whole internship, right? While you were still delivering pizzas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be there in the morning and then go and do second shift in Murfreesboro. So like I had to drive back to Antioch, change, and then drive to Murfreesboro.
Golly.
Oh, that sucked. But at least it was like only 2 months before y'all thought you should brought me on. So that was nice.
Best thing we did.
I don't think that's true at all. But yeah, I remember just feeling like, oh, this is a genuine guy. And then after our second meeting with you and Matt and James for lunch at Soulshine.
Okay.
Just to meet them and hang out before y'all brought me on.
We sat outside and you asked that day, what's the one thing you've learned by doing this job?
I don't remember that.
It was either learned or most thankful for. Because I remember tearing up again.
I like that. That's a good question.
For the podcast listeners, I'm an easy cry.
Sure. I haven't cried yet today.
It's more easy to cry than I used to, and I hate it. And it's a disability.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And it comes mostly when talking publicly. That's the worst.
That is true.
That's the worst. Because you go through all these things, these insecurities. Like, oh, they think I'm doing this on purpose.
Sure.
It's manipulation. Stop it.
Yeah.
Let the wave go by. Because it comes in waves. And if you can just be quiet for a second, it'll roll by. But then you got about 5 seconds of silence. Exactly. It's like, oh, what's wrong? So it's a no-win.
But yeah, I remember meeting the other guys and thinking they were cool.
You still hadn't been to the office then at that point?
And like
maybe that day? Did we go up to the office that Soulshine day?
I don't think so. But when I started, I was a little bit in flux because Megan, the intern before me, she was like still in school and I was not in school. I was 25 at this point. So I was just like, I can start as soon as y'all want me. So I was really like one of the first people back from COVID because this is 2021. And I remember people would see me in the office and be like, hey, Like, you're the only A&R guy here. But no, it was great. And of course, I'll always appreciate and be thankful that you saw something in me and wanted to let me be around.
I will always be thankful too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Question 2.
Go.
Along the same lines, how do you feel about our relationship now?
I feel like we are in a almost predictable place.
Ooh.
That takes good sensitivity and navigation maturity to know. So I think you'll agree with this, that in the beginning, the student is so dependent on the teacher, right? And you were learning an entirely new field.
Still am.
Well, you got some experience now, but everything was brand new to you. And you were naturally dependent on everything being explained and how you do this and what do you do in these situations. And the idea of any leader or mentor especially is like a parent in some ways, in that you are giving down what you can so that that person then is free to go and give down to the next person.
Sure.
And so on and so on. So I feel like we are very much in that handoff stage.
Okay.
So that, I mean, you'll still ask me questions, but I ask you questions. And I feel like now there's a two-way street. We learn from each other, and you're on your way to mentoring or teaching someone this role and how you do it. And you might in that say, I was taught this way, but here's been my experience.
Sure.
Like that worked for John, but it didn't really work for me. So I do it this way. And that would make me really happy, And I don't know, are you mentoring anyone now?
I am.
Is it in A&R?
No.
Or just,
It's gross to say.
Gross to say what?
Just the fact that, I guess I am.
Yeah. But it's life stuff in general. Yeah. But you'll teach someone the work and role of A&R.
Sure.
And it won't be exactly how I taught you, because you will be now personalizing it for yourself. And don't you think that's part of it? Like A&R is such a specific, unique role that literally someone's wiring can define it one way that it's not defined that way in another kind of wiring.
Yeah.
And they do it differently, right? So I feel like that exchange is happening where you've learned probably what you're going to learn from me, and you are taking now that into your own experience, story, gifting.
Sure.
And you will be applying that not just in the way you do the work, which is going to be years from now, you'll be doing that, but also in the way that you teach the next person how to do it.
Man, that's a very good answer.
All right.
I feel
curious, do you feel that?
I don't think about it. I think that was a great dichotomy of our relationship. Like, I asked the question you didn't know was coming, and then you had a great answer immediately, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I've never thought about it.
Yeah.
I think we're in a good place. Literally this morning, you came to me with something that was bothering you in our relationship, and I had no idea you had felt this way, or I had made you feel this way. And I was like, oh my God, I hate that I would do something like that to someone I love. Like, no, of course I didn't want to make you feel this way.
Yeah.
But the fact that we are both in a place that you would feel comfortable enough to be like, I gotta say something. Like, this has been eating at me.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that.
Good.
It's nice to have adult relationships.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a good place for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, specifically, does that resonate at all, that you have been learning and now you could teach someone the role, I feel like now, but you are certainly on your way to becoming, I don't know if you're ever an expert in A&R. It's just, there's so many dimensions to it. But, we talk about the 4 things all the time. You could teach those 4 things to somebody and model it for them.
I think I could,
Yeah, I do too.
That's not something I had recently thought about, but yeah, I think you're right. And I'm not naive enough to say like, yeah, I've arrived, or there's nothing else you or anyone could teach me.
No, of course not.
I could do that for sure. Yeah.
I feel good about that, and the person that you teach, not just about life, but certainly about life, and then the specific role of the work, we'll do it better than hopefully either of us have done it.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be hard.
Good point.
All right. Let's move on to question 3, also about our relationship. And it's kind of related to what we talked about this morning.
Yeah.
How can I be a better friend to you?
Oh, golly, what a great question. Okay, I'm gonna flip it back on you. What is a friend?
Whoa, okay. I think someone that you can depend on or go to no matter the circumstance.
Yep. Well, you couldn't be better at that, because I totally feel like you are that to me. I have trust in you. I feel like a friend is someone you trust, that I could, if I needed to tell you something like no one else can know about this, I would have zero worry that anyone else would ever know about it. That says a lot, because that speaks to your character. I feel like, and someone would almost have to hang out in our office to appreciate the dynamic of it on a given day.
Sure.
But like a lot of what we talked about this morning, like there's so much sarcasm that flows.
Yeah.
And we all love it.
Sure.
It's part of our language. I do think interns that come in, you and I have never talked about this, but like when you first came in, was it like, oh, wow. I wonder if people from the outside come in and like, who are these guys to each other?
Yeah.
But I have always felt like the sarcasm, that only friends can do that.
It's a love language.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Criticism is a different thing.
Sure.
Right? But sarcasm it's an art. It's a creative way of building and sustaining a relationship with people you're secure with.
Yes.
And, I can't think of a way that could be better with you, but I can sure be grateful that it's there.
Yeah.
Like you never missed on that.
Thank you.
When you came in, you were an immediate hang in our office. And I think the four of us have a unique dynamic.
I think so.
That it is kind of based on sarcasm.
No, yeah. It's all very dry.
Oh, yeah. About each other and
absolutely.
Everyone else in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And
no one is safe.
There's always at least like 2 extra steps to the bit. Like someone has to be rolling with it. Like it doesn't just stop at one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, what's easy about this, the answer to this question is, am I a friend to you? How have I been a friend to you? Those are easy answers. Well, what I've just given, how to be better, that's hard to answer, because I can't really think of if you improved on this area or,
sure.
If the essence of friendship is love and trust, I do feel like that will grow.
Sure.
The more time we spend together, the longer we work with each other, the longer we are friends. So the growth, I guess, is becoming better at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm guessing as I say these things, how that's measured. I don't know that could be measured, but we might in 5 years go, we're better friends than we ever were. Remember 2 years ago, we weren't these good friends because we went through this and this.
Yeah.
Maybe circumstances help deepen that trust and reflection of character on each other. But that's the best I got on that one.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to twist this question a bit, and I haven't done this yet.
Yeah.
How could I or anyone in your life be a worse friend to you? Like, what would bring someone down a rung in your mind?
Probably only breaking trust.
Sure.
Breaking confidence would make me feel unloved.
Interesting.
And even breaking confidence could probably be in the same category as finding out that they had said something about you,
Sure.
you know, that they wouldn't have said to your face, but said to somebody else.
Yeah.
That's gross. And it makes you feel like, well, can I trust this person to come to me when he has an issue with me? It's a hard question to answer, I think, for anybody, because you don't want to be a person that if you, let's reverse it. Let's say I screwed up with you and it had a damaging effect on the relationship. You want to be a person that goes, hey, I want to work through this and resolve it, but we're still friends, right? So when you say, oh, how do you become a worse friend? I don't know that I have a friendship with anybody that what would they have to do to make that permanent?
Sure.
Right? Like you are forever a lesser friend than you were. I don't think I can imagine saying that to someone, but I certainly have said to people, hey, we've got some repair work to do. There's been some damage done here. And some of my counseling has been about the counselor challenging me. Do you want to be a friend with this person still?
That's a bold
and like
question.
having to grapple with that. Ooh. Like maybe the reason I do is because I feel like I should. And I don't want to be a friend with somebody because I feel like I should. So when those breaks of trust have happened, or the sort of, you didn't come to me with that, you went to other people, or when those kinds of things have happened, it has damaged the friendship, but I've never thought it's irreparable or that eventually we won't work our way back if both of us want to.
Sure.
Sometimes I had an old pastor say, sometimes he was talking about dealing with sin, and that so often our heart is like, I don't want to deal with the sin. Yeah. I enjoy the sin. And he's like
Seinfeld?
Like, is that a Seinfeld thing?
That just sounds like something you would say. I don't know.
And he's like, sometimes you just got to pray for the want to. And I've never forgotten that. Like, Lord, help me find the want to deal with this, or help me find the want to rebuild that relationship, because right now I don't want to.
You gave me that advice, not to bring this up every episode, but like when I was going through my divorce, and I took that information to you kind of early on, maybe the first 2 weeks of it happening. And I think my ratio was like, I think there's 15% of me that wants to. And you were like, well, maybe pray for the want to and see where that goes. And I was like, good. I'm going to take that. Yeah. Obviously, we didn't end up staying together, but I appreciated that advice. That was good.
Yeah. I think about it all the time. and still I'm challenged by it. Like, what are the areas relationally in your life that you've lost the want to? Whew. And what does that mean? Man,
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Wow.
Welcome back. We got through the first three questions. We're on to the next three. There are 10 total.
Okay.
Strap in.
Let's go.
Number 4. Oh my. What matters most to you right now?
Well, family matters the most to me. And of course, you're asking at a time that you know about, that I am tomorrow 7 days away from welcoming twin boys into our life. And this is going to sound very self-serving, okay?
Okay.
So our oldest, our daughter, they had 2 girls. So we had 2 girl grandbabies, which was awesome and has been just the delight of my life. But when they had the second one, they're like, we're done.
Okay.
So as far back as me and my mom did a little bit of this research, we have all been, like my dad was John, I'm John Phillip. My dad was John Burrell. His dad was John Lafayette.
Interesting.
And there was one more, like all Johns, but different middle names.
Yeah.
So Kelsey had these two girls. If our son, John Austin, didn't have a boy, the Mays name has ended.
I mean, not really.
You mean there are other Mazes out there? Well, our generation.
Oh, that's fair. You're right.
Our strain of the
With
Mazes is over.
Sure.
Because there's no boy to carry it on.
Yes.
Or man. So, so significant, Stephen, in a way that the listeners will think, well, that's silly. But when they finally announced, and they told us as Christmas gifts that they were having a baby, and then the next announcement was, no, there's two babies, and they're both boys.
Yeah.
And one of them is John.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so you're gonna love him more, of course.
Of course. John Wilson and Samuel Davidson.
John Wilson's a strong name.
Yeah, isn't it?
Sorry, Sam. But
yeah. Sam Davidson. That sounds kind of historic.
That could be a person in that last name right
there.
Sam
Davidson Mays. Yeah.
Strong names.
Yeah. So some like that. They told us at Christmas, sometime maybe during the spring, when Laura, our daughter-in-law, still isn't even showing really.
Wow.
She's certainly showing now.
Yeah.
But John Austin and I were talking about the babies coming, and he said something about, I'm really glad we're having a boy, and I get to name him John.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
And I don't know, maybe overly placed, but that means so much to me.
Yeah.
And clearly, my faith matters a lot. How that is woven into my family, that all our kids are believers, they married believers, that our grandkids will be raised around faith, and they'll make those choices themselves, at some point. Those two things combined are what matter most to me right now.
That's good. I think since I created these questions and I know they're coming, this is the one that gave me the most pause for this episode. And this is the first time that I don't know, man.
Hard to answer for you.
Impossible right now. And there are some reasons why. I think just being aware of humanity recently has gotten me down a bit. It's just like, who cares?
Yeah.
We're all here for such a short time.
I get that, yeah.
What even matters? I don't know.
So, do you find any connection to meaning in the work that you do?
I do.
I know it matters to you.
Yeah.
I don't know what levels it matters.
Sure.
It certainly matters to you in a creative way, and in you want it to be good. You want it to sound good. You want the songs to be good. But there's part of our work that transcends all that. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Do you find meaning and things that matter in what transcends those things in your work?
I do when I focus in on it.
Yeah.
But I don't often focus in on it.
Yeah.
And I think there are levels. Like working directly with an artist, I want them to feel like what they have made, it matters. And I want our relationship to feel like it matters. And my relationship with the music that's made, I know that it's going to reach so many people that I'll never see or feel or talk to. And even if I did meet all of them, they would be like, wait, who are you?
Right.
What role did you play in all this? Why do we care? But the fact that it can reach people and the message of the songs, I think has eternal lasting meaning is just, there's not a word for it. It's precious, so precious.
I think the question is, what matters most to you? And it's not what matters most to me, but it matters a lot.
Yeah.
This morning, the meeting I had with a singer-songwriter guy and Seth, our current intern, sat in on that. And, we listened to a guy who's been pretty successful as an indie artist, making just music about life and
Sure.
All kinds of things. He's a believer and has started writing more faith-based music, and it's kind of surprising him. And he's, I guess, late 30s, I would guess.
Okay.
And he's starting to find out, I need my music to reflect what matters to me more. And I've always kind of made fun of Christian music.
Interesting.
And now I find myself drawn to making it. Eventually, I think that comes home to roost with everybody. And I feel like you and I and Matt and James are so fortunate that that is the biggest piece of what we get to do. You're right. People we talk, like if Natalie Lane introduced you to somebody and said what you do, you're right. But who cares?
Yeah.
And they don't need to care. That's
absolutely.
Like we talk about how anonymous our jobs are.
And that's fine.
But did it have an effect on them?
Yeah.
Was there any life change that happened? And you think about already, and you're fairly new in this, how many songs are already out there going around the world that you'll never get to hear about that have an effect on somebody, make them think differently about something. I don't want to do the job without that.
Yeah.
Like you think about a general market A&R person, and they do the job for the success of it, the money of it, to feel maybe proud of their work at some level. Is that enough? That's got to run out at some point. But I feel like the piece of this that is transcendent above just the work, the meaning part of it, that's only gotten stronger for me over almost 40 years. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
So I know that matters to you.
Absolutely.
You're the question you ask is what matters most. And you're right, that's a more difficult question. It wasn't for me, but probably all the things that can matter in your life, the older you get, the sharper the point of that spear gets. And it's pretty clear, what you're living for as you get toward an older age.
Yeah. That phenomenon, that thought is what drove me when I was trying to make my way into the industry. Of like, okay, I think I have good music taste. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. Then I figured out A&R was kind of based in that, but also working with people directly and trying to make songs. And I thought, like, I don't think I want to work in mainstream music, even though I love so many genres. Christian music was one for me that so many different areas of it saved my life literally at different times. So like Christian hip hop, worship, CCM, gospel stuff, which I grew up on. It's just like, man, I want to be a part of this. Like this changed me. Like I want to be that for other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still think about it here and there, but maybe not enough.
I feel like it'll always come back to that, right? Because you'll always run out of reasons to do it. Lord knows.
Yeah.
We deal with enough frustrating people in all the circles of the work that we do. Even if you love the work, you deal with enough of those people in a given day and you're like done with it, right?
Yeah.
It's the only thing I found in my career that is like, I can put up with anything if I get to keep doing this part. So.
Okay. Let's move on.
All right.
To question 5. What are you holding on to that's holding you back?
What people think about me. You and I talk about insecurity a lot because we both suffer from it. I think it's so common for most people. And the people like who have no insecurities, I don't know if I trust them or not.
Right.
Or at least they're acting like they don't have any.
Yeah.
But I do think it is almost welded on to the creative personality or creative wiring, a deep set insecurity. And along with that, a voice that shouts at you constantly. I don't know why God set this up this way, but this still small voice that is the most important to us, you got to listen so hard for. But the I suck voice is plenty loud and speaking all the time. So there's lots of ways to deal with it, you know. And I feel like I have practiced a lot of those ways. The War of Art, such a great book. And he's not Stephen Pressfield, not a Christian, but he calls it The Resistance in that book, which makes so much sense, right? It's the voice that you give into that will eventually, you'll quit, right? Because you'll be convinced that the voice is right.
Yeah.
And where it comes from is probably always going to be disputed in faith communities and in creative communities and different. I think I probably am less figured out on what spiritual warfare is than I ever have been. I grew up with a very strong sense of what it was, to the fact that you did literal battle with the forces of evil in exorcisms and things. So my pendulum swung way the other way when I got out of that. But I do believe there is an enemy of our soul. What he knows about what we're thinking and those kinds of things, I don't know. But I do believe if we have the capacity to do work for the greater good of humanity, there's a sense about a pushing back of that silences you. And fear and insecurity is usually what silences that. So that in my life in recent years looks more like relevancy, insecurity, and am I any good at this anymore? Do I matter anymore in the work of centricity? Are people rolling their eyes at me when I walk in because I'm the only gray-headed guy there? And like they're just wishing I would go ahead and leave. All those are all the voice. And some of them may be true, you know, I don't know. But it's back to getting in the river. Like every day you have to get in the river and say, I'm going to show up again today. And you keep doing it and you find out, okay, you know, I've still got some skill for this. I can still do it. And I still believe the work matters, of course. And I'm going to keep showing up to it until, and it's funny, I've told our leadership team, I told them this probably 2 years ago, guys, if I'm not adding value and I don't know it, you have to tell me. Promise me you'll tell me.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the fear, is that, especially I'm a founder, you know, I have a role in centricity that is unique.
Absolutely.
And would people feel free to say, you're just a burden now, you know, if they felt that way? But I don't know. That's why I'm like, please do tell me if that's going on. But until then, I feel like I get up every morning and battle the voices of meaninglessness, irrelevancy, all the symptoms of insecurity, and find the strength to face up to them again and get through today. And you and I are fortunate in that we get our strengths, we get them affirmed to us, like especially through artists who will say, not publicly most of the time, but to us, will let you know, like, that song would not have been what it was had you not helped me work on that, or the record certainly wouldn't be what it was. Your involvement in my work has made my work better.
Yeah.
Those are my words for it, but, you know, different words for that. And you sort of like, you have to measure that sort of affirmation, hold it loosely. You can't add it to your ego, but you can also take it as assurance that your work still matters.
Yeah.
You know, and even, you know, we're on different parts of the spectrum. You're on the new side and me on the old side of a career. But that's probably where the battle that I face every day is on those fronts.
Yeah. I think for me this month, my answer is going to be anxiety. I mean, even us talking earlier today, I was talking about how anxious I am for this record. And like, I'm always anxious on record days.
Yeah.
Mainly because like, am I going to record everything correctly? I'm not like a video person, but I can press play. But am I going to remember to press play? Like, is it framed well enough? And hopefully this is fine. I don't know. But like, even that, and like, this happens to be a week that I'm turning in a song for an artist. Those weeks are always difficult because everything always happens at the last freaking minute for whatever freaking reason. So that's always stressful. We've got a friend going through a health thing right now, and like I'm not a doctor. I can't do anything, but think of them and pray and offer good thoughts. But like, that's anxiety inducing. Like, I hope they're okay. There's just a lot of things going on right now. And going back to influence and concern, what can I actually do? Let me focus on that. If I can treat some of this stuff by doing something physically and practically, let me do that. If I can't, let me do my best not to be concerned with it.
Yeah. I like that. Some of our conversation this morning was about that gap we feel between what we think needs to be done in this situation and what we're capable of doing. And that gap is so wide most days. Right. But then experience keeps teaching you, no, just show up to the need, show up to the work. And, you know, you've heard me talk so much to artists about that parable of the talents. Like there's a lot to take away from the parable of the talents, but one thing certainly is take what I gave you and go to work with it. I gave you something, and like that first guy, you just put it in the ground and bring it back to me. No, that's not the point. The point is for you to take what I gave you and go out and do something with it. And in our case, we know what that work is to do with the gifting that he gave us. And showing up with that closes that gap some. It doesn't close it completely ever. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Because it leaves space for God to do what only he can do in those situations. But I want to keep showing up. I want to show up better. I want to show up wiser. And especially, I want to show up with more love.
That's good. Ooh, man. All right. Question number 6. When was the last time you made yourself proud?
Stephen Floyd. Shut up.
This one's good, huh?
You can't ask me a question like that.
I can try.
Right? Oh, you'll get to edit all this.
I can go if you like.
Do what?
I can go if you like. I have something.
Okay.
This friend I just referenced, who's going through a health thing, they contacted me the other day to talk about it, and good Lord, I had no idea what to say or do. But you were talking about that being an example of the ministry of presence, which I feel like I do have some gifting in that. I can be there physically or emotionally. I will not know what to say. That is for sure. But my heart is with them for sure. And maybe they feel that.
Oh, gosh, Stephen, they do.
So I was proud that I could just be there in the way that I was there. And I hope that it had some impact. Because I was out of my comfort zone for sure. But I was there. Oh, man. I just, this is one of those times where I feel like I didn't do enough. But like you saying that this morning, I was like, maybe I did something.
Yeah, you did. I'm proud of you for it.
Thanks.
And I think that very thing, we're going back to the voice.
You're right.
You know, you didn't do enough. And what you did, you should be ashamed of.
Oh, geez.
You did not help. You hurt.
Yeah.
You know, that's the voice. You did what you knew to do. And I guarantee you, and you know this about me, but I was 18 years an elder at our church, which you are walking into a lot of situations with families and marriages and kids and issues that people in the body of the church are experiencing. I don't know. 8, 10 times in my 18 years, when people would say something, I would hear them say, thanks for being there. And I'm like, what did I do? Man. That didn't matter. That's what they'll remember. They'll remember the way you made them feel, that you showed up. Maybe it means more even when they know I didn't know what to say, sure, but I wanted to be there for you. You weren't alone when you went through it. I'm super proud of the way I mean, you did some A-level, A-class A&R work by showing up in that situation. I'm proud of you. You should be proud of that.
Thanks.
When you first asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind, and the reason I stumbled a little bit, was I can't say much about it. Okay. If I could tell the whole story, but it involves another person.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was something that I raked up the courage to say, something that I felt needed to be said, and that's about all I can say about it. So that doesn't do a very good job of answering the question, but I was proud that I had the courage to say the thing. Other than that, and that was in a business situation, but other than that, right now I'm probably, and this is general, but I'm probably most proud of my family.
Yeah.
How many times in this podcast am I going to say, the older you get? That's the title of this podcast.
The older you get, ...
Yeah. But I think God does give you the gift of seeing your influence in your own kids' lives and in your marriage and your wife. And there is some good that I think they would say that has come from the way I've lived my life, maybe either by example or words. And to whatever extent that is true, I want to be proud of that in a healthy way.
Sure. That's a good answer.
Okay.
I think we have enough time to get in for question 7.
Sure we do.
What was the last piece of art you consumed that inspired you?
Okay, as an entire experience, it's Jacob Collier's Jessie 4.
This is interesting.
Okay.
Because I'm going to interrupt right here. Mine's a little bit out of the box, but mine is Jacob Collier's concert. So we can talk about both.
Yes. As you get older, one thing I have noticed though, I bet it's already, there are foreshadowings of it in your work and life. We listen to so much music on a vocational basis.
Sure.
And now I can see where, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of songs in a career that's gone this long, listening to them vocationally, and so many people want feedback, and you're trying to give healthy, non-damaging criticism on things. The ability and enjoyment of listening to music as a work of art, and for the beauty that's in it, it begins to diminish.
Absolutely.
And you find yourself listening to everything with that critical ear of like, and we do it every week.
It's a gift and a curse.
Yes, it is. You want to be helpful in criticism that you give, but you don't want it to bleed into just the enjoyment that you've always had of music. And the way I enjoyed music in my 20s is completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a casualty of my career, So when something does show up, you pay attention to it, right? And you make as much room for it as you can. And I did a good job on that with Jessie. I've been quoted now as saying, I think he may be the Mozart of our generation. I'm going to stand by that, even though there are, legit music professors that would slap me for that, and I get it. But I couldn't stop listening to it.
It's great.
And the more I listened to it, the more I wanted to make music, the more I wanted more music in the world.
Yes.
And you know how much I post. It ain't much.
Yeah.
But I couldn't not post about that because
that.
I wanted the world to listen to that record and to get the greater meaning in it, you know, that music does something for people. It moves people. Take the faith part out of it. Or maybe that is the faith part. I don't know, but pay attention to when it's this good and make room for it in your life. And I'm glad I did with that record, but there's older music that I can go back to and feel some of those same stirrings, but that's the most recent thing. And you're right, we got to enjoy the show together and both came away saying, how do you even describe what just happened?
You can't.
Yeah.
You really can't. And it was so spiritual in there. Not because he was like overtly faith-based, or I don't think he said God at all.
No.
But just his heart of wanting to bring everyone in the room together for one night through music was just so beautiful and
all
touching.
Kinds of music.
Yes. Nothing was off the table. And he can play everything, of course, and he can sing everything. But like, things would happen. He's like, how is he doing this?
Yeah.
And like, it's the most insane collections of notes you've ever heard. But at the same time, it's not like too much either. It's just like, okay, this guy is this guy.
There feels like there is zero ego in it.
Yes, exactly.
How is that?
And he's so effusive to like all the band, like, and introducing them, like, and it feels real. It doesn't feel like he's putting it on. It's just like,
yes,
this guy is not human.
Was it you and I talking about how his bass player is amazing until he picks up the bass?
Exactly.
And how would it feel to be a player in his band?
Good Lord.
But you don't get it. You get a sense that he so respects and loves that guy. All those people up there playing, because they all have their vital role in what people are going to experience that night, you know? And I think that's unusual for somebody to be that gifted and that unassuming in the performance of their work. We just experienced something that's really rare that night, and thank God we got to, right?
I don't remember an experience, whether at a regular show or in a church, that I felt that spiritually connected to people. Like it was magical.
It's an amazing thing to say.
Truly magical.
Yeah.
He's captured something else that no one else is tapping into, I think.
And when was that? Is that over a month ago?
Yeah.
Here we are still talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And we want to talk about it.
Yes.
And when somebody didn't get to experience, shame on them. Like, you got to educate them. Right?
Yeah. If Jacob Collier is ever in your area, you have to go see him no matter what.
Preach.
We're going to take a quick break.
That went straight right here.
Oh my, welcome back. We had a great clap right there. We're on to question number 7. This one also gave me some pause, so here we go.
Okay.
Who do you good Lord. Who do you know personally that inspires you to be better?
I think this is up to me to name him. He wouldn't name himself, but it's Al Andrews, who's a counselor at a ministry called Porter's Call. I feel like I've been very fortunate in that I have a friend who's a counselor and a counselor who's a friend, depending on what the need is at the time. And sometimes it's both things, you know. But sometimes I leave time with him going, does he really believe that about me?
Interesting.
Like he believes so many things about me that I don't believe about myself. Like, he wouldn't just be saying that because he's my friend, would he?
Yeah.
And deep down, I don't believe that. But he calls things out of me. He calls courage out of me. This battle with insecurity. I mean, I've probably known him, I've known him since 2001.
Okay.
And he was not officially my counselor, but he was already becoming that friend who had great insight. And he's been challenging that in me for that many years. And sometimes he'll challenge it by saying, you and I both know that's not true. Why are you saying that? Like he'll like come at me almost. And then sometimes he'll challenge it by saying, I know this person who's not lying that says this. Why do you believe that? You know?
Man.
So time with Al gives me courage, and it deepens my faith and calls things out of me that I doubt myself are in there. So very grateful for him. And he's the first name that comes to mind.
That's good.
Yeah.
For this episode, I think I'm going to go with my mother.
Oh,
and
so sweet.
It's because I was going to lunch with Steph and we were on the way, and I was talking about some sort of spreadsheet I had made for work that I was just agonizing over, and I gotta hate making spreadsheets. And I'm a problem solver, but I will complain about the problem at every moment until it is solved. And I just thought, my mom's the same way, but she wouldn't complain.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like she just gets stuff done, and I admire that.
So it's more her example that you've seen. Oh gosh, that's so sweet, Steve, because you know, you'll get here someday, unfortunately, but one of the things that keeps my parents' memory alive is notes and recordings that express their belief in me.
Whoa, that's huge.
Notes from my mom, recordings from my dad. And my dad was not nearly as, it was much harder for him, you know, but that's why when he said it, you knew, man, it meant, you know, I felt it down to my toes. So the only reason I tell you that is lean into it, you know. It seems stupid now, but like they won't be here, and you'll draw on some of the strength that provides for you, the belief that they had in you that was able to make you better. Every day, I wish they were still around, you know, for lots of reasons, but that's one of them. That's a great answer, though. You know, parents who believe in you, golly, that's strong stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I think I said that was question 7. I don't know.
I can't remember.
But it was question 8. So,
okay.
In case I didn't mess it up, I'll take this out. Question 9. Do you still believe in love? If so, why?
I do.
Okay.
I believe in love more than ever, I think.
Wow.
I think, now, I do believe in romantic love, but
sure.
I don't think that's what we're talking about, maybe. But the power of love to change someone, I've gotten to see it so many times, and power of love to motivate someone to do the hard thing, to make the sacrifice, to lower yourself, to humble yourself, to defer to the other person. I believe all that's based in love.
Sure.
And I do believe this, but I've always said that the act of creating is the most like God we ever get to be, because obviously his demonstration of creativity in the world, and when we look around us and we see what he created, for us to create something as little image bearers, we're doing something like he does, you know, not in the same way, obviously, but he creates, we get to create too. But I believe love is where we get to share the most in his character. He is love, right? So that became really hard for me to believe, being brought up the way I was. So, he might be a lot of things, but it ain't love. So, you know, I'm glad that the years have been able to teach me that is who he is. And when I love someone else, and I'll give you a demonstration of this or an illustration of it in a minute, but I am sharing in his character in a way that no other thing that I could do provides for me. So, a little men's group I was in years ago, all struggling like with the idea of how do we love our wives better? How do we demonstrate love for them? And this guy was like, think of something your wife hates doing and start doing it for her.
Yeah.
Super practical,
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
And I don't know that Diane ever hated this, but, and of course our kids were much smaller. The house was a lot busier with my parents living here and everything back then. But the idea hit me like Diane is never going to, in the morning, walk into a dirty kitchen. And that is going to be an act of love for me to clean the kitchen. And when I don't want to do it, but when I do, I'm going to remind myself, I'm letting the wave go by. I'm going to remind myself of how much I love her.
Yeah.
And how grateful I am for her. And cleaning out the sink is some, the smallest metric you can measure of demonstration of that. But if I do it over time and I do it every day for years, I hope she feels loved by that,
Yeah.
Well, I think she does, but it didn't change her. It changed me.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good.
And it changed my view of her and how to love her well. So I saw the change in me, and that's why I believe in it more than ever. And that's only one thing, right? One example, but it's a super practical one that I can say.
Yeah.
But to see love change nations, communities, people, even you, even me, I believe in it more than ever.
Man, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
My answer for this episode, because the answer's been yes every time, but it's been hard every time.
The changing part has been
just believing in love. And if so, why? Sometimes I don't have a reason why. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, I do. This week or this month, it's a yes. And it's a little bit of a stronger yes than it has been. I don't know if I can point to why. I think just taking stock, like I said earlier, like in the humanity of everything, just like what even matters, I guess, is love. Like if we don't have much, if we don't have much time or energy or resources and things are crazy around us, what can we offer everyone else? And I think we can do that with love.
Do you think that you felt it a little more recently? Would that have anything to do with this week? And
maybe
some of what you've walked through this week?
Possibly.
Because we talked about, and we mentioned it here, I think, that ministry of presence idea. I think when you show up with the ministry of presence in someone's life, you are saying, I love you. And I love you enough to stop what I'm doing and show up for you, even when I don't have anything to say. That's powerful. And it's love, and it will change people. I don't think you've lived that this week.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Maybe that's why you feel a little closer to it this week.
Maybe.
As we get older.
Yeah. Well, John, we've arrived at question 10.
This has got to be these are such great questions.
Thank you very much. What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah. Well, it would be easy now to say, he loved people.
Sure. You could say that if you wanted to.
It doesn't sound like it's enough of an answer. But if all four of those people got up at my funeral, It only takes about 5 seconds for it to go
This
by.
is a fast wave.
Yeah. And they all said, I really felt like he loved me. Wow. I'd be so happy if I got to be on the front row of that funeral. There's nobody wants to be remembered for just one thing.
Sure.
I hope there are people who felt like my work was better because my relationship with him and his commitment to me. I hope I got to be a part of planning a church.
Yeah.
That became a mega church, I guess, by the definitions of mega churches now. And when I think of the thousands of people that have come in and out of that since 1997, however many years that is, that they would remember that I was a part of founding that, and that maybe the ministry they experienced there wouldn't have happened, had that thing not been planted.
Yeah.
So there's pieces of things I can pick out about my work and my story and faith, but I think it's all summarized. I felt like he loved me, genuinely.
Yeah,
and I didn't doubt it. And if someone said, "Well, how did you know that?" That it might be a different answer for different people.
Sure.
But I'd love that if that's what I was remembered for. Get it?
Uh-huh.
I love that they felt loved.
Yeah. I think for me this month, and it has been difficult coming up with something different every month.
Oh, gosh.
I think I want to be remembered as a person of faith. Not someone who was necessarily always in church, or not someone who followed a belief system blindly, but someone who had faith in others and loved enough to challenge something.
Yeah.
It's like believing in something, sure, but like knowing when to challenge, like, okay, why do I believe that? That's been important to me. Like, I've been nervous about getting back in church, and I've been going to a church this year, and it's been nice and different from what I grew up with, and I really appreciate that. But there's still something nagging in my brain and in my heart of just like, it's the voice kind of just
it is.
Why are you doing this? You don't believe this? And like, I don't have to believe everything. I need to test the waters, but like know that I'm secure. Like, okay, here's my baseline. Let me poke and prod at everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me be a true person of faith. Like, I don't want to just blindly follow something because that's the easy way out. Yeah, I want to be someone who wrestled with the ideas.
Does
that make sense?
Of course it does.
Okay.
And I feel like there's that line out of The Angel That Troubled the Waters, Thornton Wilder, who says, "In love service, only wounded soldiers can serve."
Oh my goodness.
Is that worth repeating?
It is. Say it again.
In love service, only wounded soldiers can serve.
Goodness.
And Stephen, you took a severe wound last year.
Yeah.
And one that no one, including you, should expect to heal up. In some ways, you may always walk with a limp from that one. But that wounding enables you to love in a way that you would have never been able to before.
Oh boy.
And I've seen that in your life, So it's always those things like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want to subject myself to it. I want to do everything I can to avoid it.
Absolutely.
But thank God it happened. Can I say that,
Yeah.
And you're a more loving person than I think than I met, at the Sonic years ago. So there's that idea, like the wounding enables us to love in a way that we couldn't have before. And then this idea of trusting God's work, whether you understand it or not.
Yeah.
You said something in there like you didn't understand it or don't have it figured out. And, part of my journey over these last probably 4 years, that started with a severe discomfort over relationship with people who had everything figured out.
Sure.
Doctrinally.
Yeah.
And theologically, and this growing dis-ease with that. And it led me to leave the church that I did plant.
Yeah.
And led me away from that and toward a freedom that I never expected, that shouts constantly, you don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
You don't have to think that you live free of doubt.
Yeah.
Doubt everything. You will doubt everything. And you'll come around from that doubt and start doubting again.
Mm-hmm.
That you make that a part of your faith journey, like you do breathing, to sort of embrace the doubt has been world-changing for me.
Yeah.
I do think we grow up as evangelicals, and you and I both grew up with a good bit of this, that figuring it out is the destination.
Absolutely.
Now I can tell you the right chapter and verse for everything because I know.
Yeah.
I went to the right school or sat under the right teacher, and here's what I know now, and got it figured out for you. Here you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the most damaging thing you can do to people. And, in one of these stories that you know about with this poor guy who lost his son to suicide, and who, in a moment of begging for clarity, said, "John, just tell me my son isn't burning in hell." To say, for the best answer I could deliver to be, "I hope not," was so against everything I wanted to be in that moment. But it was the most truthful thing I could say.
Yeah.
And it was not the opening of the door, but at least turning the knob to releasing this burden of having to have it right and figured out. Because you and I both know, once we think we do, we're going to read the next book of a really smart guy who's like, oh, wait, he disagrees with this guy. Which one is right? Because they can't both be right. And to release having to know and release yourself into the unknown and the mystery of faith. Oh, what a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
And you combine, for me, combining that journey, and I'm still very much on it, with the ability to grow in the way that I can love people. Ooh, that's life-changing. It's life-changing.
There you go. We have come to the end of the questions. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Oh, dang it.
A little loose, but...
Welcome back. We're in the outro. John, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for asking me to do this.
This has been great.
I feel honored that you would ask me to do this. I'm not kidding you. Because a lot of these people don't know, and I feel fortunate that I get to know a little behind the scenes, going all the way back to the beginning of this, the courage you've had to muster up to do this, and sort of the reach it's been for you. Absolutely. It makes me really proud of you, and like that I get to be a part of it. I feel very honored by that.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I know you earlier said you rarely ever post, but if people wanted to follow you out on the internet, where can they do that?
Yeah, I think they should follow me just to see how true that actually is. So I am Mayscast, Mayscast, which when I first got on the internet, I thought that was so cool. And yet you're always like, why did I just use my stupid name. Anyway, it's Mazecast on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I've never posted once on TikTok.
I haven't either. Well, I will with the show.
I hope people understand that in our jobs, we are a little bit of slaves to social media.
We are.
But especially Instagram and TikTok. So we're on it a lot, but doesn't mean we post on a lot.
Yeah.
I think I post more than you do.
I'm posting once a month right now this year.
Okay.
And that's more than I kind of ever have. I used to post 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah. I want to post when there's something fun that's happened or interesting in my life, or something that inspires me. I did post about Jacob.
Of course.
I posted last year about Diane's daylilies because they inspired me. But even with that desire, I still don't do it. I don't know. There's something about like how much trouble it is.
Yes.
And the Dominica Cocas in our life would go, it's no trouble. It's so easy.
It's so difficult.
But I know. Can I just say this?
Please.
It's the voice.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like, what's so and so going to think about this post? What, you know?
That's interesting. I don't have that. Not for this.
I totally have it. See, my insecurities. I'm in an ocean of insecurities.
Apparently
You're
so.
still just in a lake.
I'm in the river.
You are, yeah.
You can follow me on Instagram at steflo55. That's STEFLO55. And you can follow this show at A Moment Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thanks for joining us for a moment. See you on the next one.
See ya.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Man, you got some editing to do on that one.